Hey guys, in this video I'm going to give you an introduction to Webpack, okay, which is extremely popular at this time. So this is going to be for absolute beginners. If you've used Webpack in the past, then this will basically be a refresher for you guys. So there's a ton of stuff to learn, especially when you get into the different loaders and plugins and all that. But we're going to focus on just the basics, okay, just to set up Webpack, to have it convert our dynamic code and modules into static assets. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, Webpack is what's called a module bundler, and it takes modules, whether that's a custom file that you created or something that was installed through npm, and it generates static assets to represent those modules. Okay, so then you can take a fully dynamic application and package it all up into static files, which you can then upload and deploy to your server. Okay, so you can also extend what Webpack can do with plugins, loaders, which all have their own separate set of configurations. All right, so let's take a look at some of the properties of a module and what a module basically is. You can require any JavaScript file with Webpack, but when we say module, we usually mean a discrete chunk of functionality or chunk of code. And it's usually abstract, and it delegates functionality to libraries so that we don't really have to understand the complexity of it. Okay, we can just require it and we can use the public API that's exposed. It's usually based on a single task or responsibility, and more often than not, it's reusable, whether that's reusable within that application or within other applications as well. All right, now there are other modules out there. One example would be Browserify. So what makes Webpack different? So Webpack uses something called code splitting, which allows us to break up our code base into chunks, which can be loaded on demand. Okay, this is an opt-in feature, and you can provide split points in your code if you want. Another great feature of Webpack are loaders. So by default, Webpack can only work with native JavaScript, but there's loaders that can be used to transform other resources into JavaScript. So we can actually transform CSS into JavaScript and then just require it right in that script. Another example would be with the React library. React uses JSX, which is JavaScript syntax extension, and Webpack has a JSX loader to work with React. Okay, Sass is another example. We can simply require Sass or SCSS files right in the JavaScript. All right, Webpack also has a very clever way to parse just about any third-party library. So we can use expressions in dependencies such as this Jade import right here. Webpack can also use both AMD and CommonJS modules. And then it also has a plugin system. You can write your own plugins, but that's way beyond the scope of this crash course. All right, so these are some of the example loaders. There's literally hundreds of them, but these are some of the popular ones. So there's the CSS and style loader that allows you to just include CSS right in your script. We also have Sass and Less, which are CSS precompilers. So we can simply include a Sass or SCSS file or a Less file. JSX is used for React, so we can use that. Babel is used for a few different things, but it's often used so that we can use ES6 JavaScript syntax, and it'll then compile down to ES5, so you have full browser compatibility. Okay, Coffee is used for CoffeeScript, TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript, and then we also have loaders for template engines like EJS, which is embedded JavaScript, also Pug, which is formerly known as Jade, and Handlebars. Okay, we also have a JSON loader to handle JSON. So there's a lot of loaders that you can check out on the documentation. So to set up Webpack is pretty simple. We just want to install it with npm. We can install it globally so that we can run it from anywhere. And then there's also a module called Webpack Dev Server, which basically just takes all the generated code and just loads it up into the browser on localhost. I believe it's port 8080 by default. All right, so this is a diagram off the documentation, and this basically shows you how Webpack works. So if we look at this one here, Webpack reads the entry point and analyzes its dependencies, also its dependencies, and so on. Okay, so this is what we would basically have in our source folder. So we'd have a main app.js, and then we could simply require in a module such as this cats module. And this cats module basically just gives us this array that we can use. And then here you can see we're just console logging that array. All right, so we're able to include JavaScript files within each other. Just that alone is a reason to use Webpack. All right, and then Webpack bundles the entry point and all of its dependencies into a single file. In this case, it's called app.bundle.js. So this is the file that you would include in your index.html inside of a script tag. And it'll take all the modules that you have and just bundle it into that one file. Okay, and you'll have all that functionality. You won't need to be running a server or anything like that. All right, so that's a very brief summary of Webpack. Now we're going to jump in, we're going to install it, and I'll show you how to do a few things with it. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and dive into Webpack. Okay, now I'm using Linux Ubuntu, but all this stuff is the same whether you're on Linux or Mac or Windows. You will need Node.js installed, so make sure you go to nodejs.org and download it, install it, and get that set up. All right, and then once you do that, we can install Webpack. Now I'm going to install it globally so that it can be accessed from anywhere. So I'm going to go in my terminal and just do an npm. Actually, I need to use sudo because I'm on Linux. So sudo npm install, and we want to do the -g for global, and then Webpack. And that'll get it installed on your system. Okay, while it's doing that, I'm going to create a project folder. It's going to be in my project sandbox directory. And we're going to call this just Webpack_app. Okay, and then we also want to open that up in the text editor, which I'm using Atom. So I'm going to say add project folder and go to project sandbox and Webpack app. Alright, so now Webpack is installed. Next thing we want to do is create a package.json file, which is part of Node.js, and it's a manifest file, and it holds all the information for the app, the dependencies, things like that. So let's say npm init, and that'll go ahead and generate it. Actually, I don't want to do it here. I want to go into Webpack app. Okay, and then we'll do npm init. Okay, name, that's fine. Description, I'm just going to say sample Webpack app. Entry point, I'm going to put app.js, and then we'll just enter through the rest. Alright, so now we have our package.json file, and it should look like this. Now I want to do our testing in the browser, so we're going to create an index.html file for that. Okay, and then in this file, we're just going to put our basic tags in. I'm just going to say Webpack app, and we want to include a file down here. Let's say script source. Okay, and then this is going to be pointed to a file called bundle.js. Okay, that's going to be the final result of the JavaScript when it gets passed through Webpack. Okay, but we do need a source file to work with, so that's the app.js file. So let's create that. Okay, and just for now, I'm just going to let's do an alert, and we'll just alert hello world. Okay, so we'll save that. Now, this is the source file. This is what we want to run through Webpack. So let's go back to our terminal, clear this out. And what we're going to do here is say Webpack, and then the source file, which is app.js, and then the compiled file, which is going to be bundle.js. So let's go ahead and run that. And this is what it looks like when it's successful. If there were errors, they'd be shown here in red. But now notice that we have a bundle.js file. And if we look at it, it has a ton of code in it. This is all Webpack stuff. You don't have to worry about any of this. And you can see the actual console log that we have in app.js is down at the bottom here. I'm sorry, not console log, it's an alert. Alright, so remember the index file is pointing to the bundle.js, so it's pointing to this file. And the app.js file is the one that we do stuff in. This is the source file. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up our index page. So index.html, we're going to open with Chrome, and we get an alert that says hello world. Now, for the functionality that we have, which is just a simple an alert, there's no reason to use Webpack, okay, because we're not doing anything that you need Webpack for. But if you wanted to, let's say, import a file into this app.js as a module, you need Webpack for that. If you wanted to add your CSS through the JavaScript, Webpack can do that. If you want to use Babel and you want to convert ES6 JavaScript down to ES5, you can do that. You do need a loader, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But there's literally hundreds, or I don't know, even thousands of different things that you can use Webpack for. All right, so let's start off with just requiring modules. So I'm going to create another file, and I'm going to call this, let's call this people.js. Okay, and what we want to do is say module.exports. Now what this does is it makes available whatever we put here to the outside. Okay, so for now we're just going to make it a string that says hello world. Okay, so we'll save that, and now we should be able to go to app.js, and let's take this out, this alert, and let's just do a require of people.js. Okay, we'll save that, and let's go ahead and run the Webpack command again. Can't resolve people.js. Let's see. Oh, that's because we need to put a / here, telling it it's in this folder. So let's try that again. All right, so now it's successful, and if we go over and reload, we get hello world. Now that's coming from the people module. If I change this to, let's say, hello everyone, save. Now notice if I do it now, it's not going to show hello everyone because we didn't run it through Webpack. So we'll have to just run the Webpack again, reload, and now we get hello everyone. Okay, so now we can import different things into our main app.js file. And then once it gets bundled through Webpack, it gets put into the bundle.js, which then is being included in the HTML file. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, if you don't want to have to keep running that Webpack command after you make a change, you can actually use it in watch mode. So what we can do is say Webpack app.js bundle.js, and at the end here just tack on -- watch. And now you can see that the command prompt is now just sitting here and it's waiting. Okay, so if we make a change, let's go into people, and let's just add an exclamation here and then save. And then we'll go and reload, and you can see the exclamation mark. Okay, we didn't have to run it again because it's just running in the background, watching our files. All right, so back to people.js. Right here, we're just exporting a string, but it doesn't have to be a string. It can be anything. It could be the result or the return of a function. So if we wanted to say function get hello, and just return. Let's just say return hello there, and then set the exports to just get hello, and then we'll save that, go back to app.js, and we'll just leave that as is, reload, and we get hello there. It's now getting the result or the return value of that function. All right, but what we're going to do is create an object. Okay, so I'm actually going to just comment this out. I want to leave most of this stuff in the files for you guys. So what I'll do is create a person, or not person, let's create people. And what that's going to be is an array of people objects. So let's say name. We'll have John Doe, of course. And let's say name Steve Smith, and we'll say name Carol Williams. Oops. All right, so we have these people, this people array, and then I'm just going to say module exports people. Okay, so let's save that. And then we'll go over to app.js, and let's just leave that and see what happens. Okay, so an alert doesn't work well with objects because it won't show us the data in the object. It basically just says it's an object. So what I'll do is change this to a console.log. Okay, and then we'll save that and reload, and then let's hit F12 to open up our Chrome tools, and you'll see that gives us an array with three items. And if we look at those items, we have our people. Okay. Now, usually you won't do this. You'll put it in some kind of variable. So if we say let people equals require people.js, and then let's console.log people. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, but it does the same thing. And let's say we wanted to get an individual person. We could say people, and let's get the first one, which is in the 0 index. Reload, and it gives us that one object, which is John Doe. If we want to get a specific field like the name, we can say .name, and now we get John Doe. Okay, so you can see it's very easy to create a module and import it into, or require it into, your app.js file. Alright, so up to this point we've created our own file, people, and required it in, but let's use something else from the node package module directory. Okay, so let's say we want to use jQuery. So we'll go over to our command line. I'm going to keep that running and then go down here and go into Webpack app, and then we're going to do an npm install jQuery and then -- save. Okay, so that installed jQuery through npm, and what we want to do here is just bring it in just like we did with people. So we'll say let money sign equals require, and let's say jQuery. All right, and then down here let's do just anything in jQuery. So we'll say we want the body, and we want to append onto that, and let's say we want to append an H1, and then inside here we're just going to concatenate the person's name, which is this right here. Okay, so I'll grab that, paste that in there, and let's go ahead and save that and reload, and now it's getting put into the body. Okay, so we're using jQuery from this file here, and it's all going to get compiled into bundle.js. Remember, that's the only file that the index that the HTML is including. So no matter what we do, it's going to end up in that file. So if we look at that, it's just basically a bunch of gibberish. Okay, you can see there's our people array, and then we have all the jQuery stuff should be down there as well. Okay, but we don't really have to look at this file ever. So just for shits and giggles, let's go ahead and loop through the names of the people and output them using jQuery, just so this file does something. All right, so we'll use an each loop. So jQuery.each, and then we're going to pass in people, which is the array that comes from the people.js file, and then we'll do function, and that will take in the key and the value, and then I'll just grab this right here, we'll cut it, put it in here, and just change this 0 to the key, which is going to be an integer, a number. So let's go ahead and save that, reload, and now it's printing out all the people from the people.js file or module. So now what I want to do is introduce to you a loader. Okay, we're going to use the CSS and the style loader so that we can actually require CSS files and styles from our JavaScript. So to do this, let's first create a new file, and we'll call it style.css. Okay, and in that file, we're just going to give the body a style, and we're going to say background, something very prominent, let's say red. Okay, so we'll save that. Now we have this style sheet. So we actually need to install loaders just like we would anything else. So we're going to go to our terminal here, and we're going to say npm install let's see, what is it? CSS dash loader, and then also style dot, not dot, dash loader. And then we're going to add this to our dev dependencies. So just do dash dash save dash dev. And that will install those two loaders. Okay, so now if we look at our package.json file, you'll see we have those loaders right here. Now what we're going to do is go back to app.js, and we're going to, let's see, we'll go to the top, I guess, and let's do require, and in here we're going to say exclamation style. Well, actually, we want the actual file, which is going to be ./style.css, but that's not going to work because we need to implement the loaders. So we can do that right here, and we'll say exclamation style, and then exclamation CSS, and then exclamation. Okay, so that's telling it that we want to use the style loader and the CSS loader. And I believe now you have to add dash loader, because you didn't have to before, but I think you do now, and I don't want to get the error. So let's do that, and let's see what happens if we save and we reload. Now you can see that we have the red background. So that style sheet is actually being included in our JavaScript. All right, if we look at the source code here, there's no link to any CSS file. It's all in this bundle file that Webpack created for us. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now this here doesn't look very nice, and there's a way that we can fix this, and there's a way we can fix a lot of things actually. For instance, when we run Webpack, we have to include app.js and then bundle.js for the output. We can actually put all this stuff inside of a config file for Webpack. So let's go to our application root, create a new file, and we need to call it webpack.config.js. Okay, and in here we want to do a module.exports and set that to some curly braces, and then we want to specify an entry file. Okay, so for us it's going to be ./app.js. Okay, and then we want an output, and the output is actually an object which is going to have a path. So for the path, I'm just going to say _dir name, which will be this current path, and then also a file name. And for the file name, that will be bundle.js. Okay, now when you're using a loader like the CSS style loader, we have to define those in this file. So right under output, we'll put a comma, and then we need to say module, which will be another object, and then we can do loaders, and loaders is going to be an array of objects. Okay, so let's create our first one here. Now this is going to take an element for test, and basically what we're going to put here is an expression. So we're going to put / .css money sign and then /. Now what this is saying is that this loader is for any file that ends with .css that we require. All right, so we're going to put another parameter here and specify loader, and for that we're going to say style-loader, and then put an exclamation, and we want CSS loader. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, and then let's go back to app.js and get rid of this crap here. It's just going to be including the file. Now, since we put in the config file, we put the entry and the output, then we don't want to include that in the actual Webpack command. So let me just clear this out. And we should now just be able to run Webpack. Okay, and that should compile it, reload, and everything is still good. Now what I want to do now is I want to structure this in a better way, because this is not how you should package your application. We have both the source files and the compiled file in the same level. Okay, so what we'll do is create a folder, and we're going to call that source, and that's going to be for the source files, and that's going to be app.js, so we'll move that in. We're also going to move in there, actually, you know what I'm going to do is in the source create another folder called JS and put app.js in there. We also want the people module in there. Alright, and then we're going to create in the source a folder called CSS, and we're going to move in the style.css into there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is delete the bundle file because that's going to be regenerated. Okay, so we'll move that to the trash. So all we should have in the root here is the index.html, the package.json, and the Webpack config. Now, since we move those files, we have to edit the config file. All right, so we're going to change this now to /source/js/app.js. That's going to be the entry. And then the output, I don't want it to be in this root folder. I want it to go into a folder called dist. Okay, so what we'll do is just add to this. We'll concatenate /dist. Okay, and then the file name can stay the same. That's bundle.js. So let's save that. And then another thing we need to do is go back into our app.js in the source and change the location here, because right now it's going to be .. into CSS and then style.css. Okay, and then that should do it. So let's save it. And then what I want to do, instead of just saying Webpack, I'm going to put an npm script that we can put in the package.json file. So see where we have scripts. I'm going to change this to build, and then that's just going to run Webpack. Okay, so we should be able to do npm run build. So let's save that and let's try it out. So let's go and say npm run build. Alright, and if we go, and now this here isn't going to work. We need to go to our source folder. I'm sorry, not our source folder. We want the index.html here. We have to change that because now the bundle is in the dist folder, which you can see got created when we ran the run build. So we just want to change this to dist/bundle, reload, and now everything's working. Okay, so this is a much more professional type of structure than just having everything on one level. All right, so I really hope I didn't lose too many of you guys there, because this is kind of important, where your source files and all that. If it did sound confusing, then maybe go back and kind of listen to it again. Now, there's also something called Webpack Dev Server that we can use to run just that, a development server, instead of loading it from the file like we're doing here. So let me just close all this stuff out. Let's see, I don't want to save that. Alright, so we need to install this with npm, so we're going to go over here and we're going to say npm install, and I'm going to install this globally, and then webpack-dev-server, and we'll add that to the dev dependencies. Let's see, I got to do sudo. Okay, so now that that's installed, what I want to do is go back to our package.json, and we already have the build command here. Let's add a script for start. Okay, so for that, we're going to run Webpack Dev Server. Now, we need to specify where the entry and the output files are, because we have those in the source folder. So we're going to say --entry, and that's going to be ./source/js/app.js. That's the entry file. And then we want to do --output-file name, and then that's going to be in the ./dist/ bundle.js. Okay, so now it knows where those two things are, and it can run it in basically in a development server. All right, I'm just going to put a comma at the end here. Okay, so let's save that and let's hope this works. I'm going to close that out, and we're going to go over here, clear this, and let's run npm start. Okay, so if you look up here, it says it started on port, where is it? Port 8080. So let's go to localhost, port 8080, and there's our application. Okay, so when you're working on development, you want to use this dev server. When you're ready to build it out, then you can just run npm run build. Now there's one more thing I want to do, and that is show you how to use the Babel loader. Okay, Babel is used to basically take ES6 code, which is the newer JavaScript not markup, but syntax, and then convert it down to ES5 so that you have maximum browser compatibility and you don't have issues on older browsers and all that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say npm install Babel core Babel-loader, and then we also want the ES2015 preset. So that is going to be Babel-preset-ES2015. All right, and then we'll just do save dev for that. All right, so once that's done, all we have to do is go to our Webpack config file, go down to where we have our loaders, and let's go right here, put in another set of curly braces, and we'll say test, and then let's do / /.js $. So this is going to affect all files that have the JS extension. Okay, so we're going to say loader, and that's going to be the Babel loader. Okay, now we want to exclude the entire node modules folder. We don't want that. We don't want anything changed in there. So let's say exclude, and then do /node modules /, and then we're also going to add this query, and this is where we want to put our preset. Okay, we're using the ES2015 preset. So let's say presets, and that would actually be an array, so we want some square brackets, and then we just want to type in ES2015. All right, and I believe that should do it. So let's go ahead and save that. And then what I'm going to do is go over to where we have our server running, and I'm just going to cancel that, and I'm going to build it out. Okay, so we're going to say, what was it, npm run build. What's this? Let's see. Preset invalid. Let's see, did I use the wrong syntax here? Exclude node modules query. Oh, had an extra R in there. So presets ES2015, that should work. So let's try that again. All right, so we'll do npm run build. All right, looks like it went okay. And now if we go to our bundle, our dist bundle file, and let's search for something that's in the app.js. So we have, let's say, let people. So let is part of ES6. Now, since we're using Babel, what should happen is it should take the let and convert it to var, which is part of ES5. Okay, so let's go to the bundle and let's search for people. Okay, we'll go down, and there it is, var people. So it's taking our ES6 code, converting it to ES5 so that we have maximum browser compatibility. Okay, there's the vars again. Okay, so that actually is really, really helpful. I know that the modern browsers they're really catching up to ES6, but there are some people that still are using older browsers where you may want to use Babel. All right, so hopefully hopefully it was clear. I kind of feel like I didn't explain certain things as best as I could have, but I don't know. Hopefully you guys understand at least the gist of it. I will make this code available through GitHub. It's a great starter or boilerplate app, so you can add your own functionality to it. But that's it. If you're not subscribed and you enjoyed this, please subscribe. I upload at least twice a week, and that's it. Thanks for watching.